In 2023, I made a video where I counted down all 10 coasters I had ridden up to that point. Since then, I had ridden a grand total of 5. It may not be much, as my size makes me too big for most coasters, but all 5 of them exceeded my number 1 pick, and another pick has shifted, so I decided to make an all-new version of my list. But first, let's pay respect to all the parks I've been to, but haven't ridden any coasters at. And now for the list, with apologies to St. Phyllis Productions for copying his ranking introduction audio style.
Hey folks, viewer mail time again!
Do powered coasters count? Do rides that are just an oval count? To me, yes! Back at the Barnyard Hayride at Mall of America's Nickelodeon Universe is the first coaster I've ever ridden. I first rode it back in 2004 and revisited it in 2013. It's a simple layout, which is why the train does multiple laps for over a minute and a half. For whatever reason, the ride is themed to Back at the Barnyard, which was new at the time, but aside from the memes, isn't really in the zeitgeist nowadays. I don't know if they will ever swap the theme, or if they'll just replace it with a traditional kiddie coaster, assuming it could fit in the area. Back at the Barnyard Hayride is also one of Nickelodeon's remaining acknowledgments in the show. Why did they remove it from Paramount Plus?
Don't call me Dirty Percy!
Doozies won it, but they can't have it. Yet I do have it. What is that? The Magic Flyer credit. Located at Six Flags Magic Mountain, Magic Flyer has gone through many names, which I'll just display because I don't want to do a third lecture on the ride's history. And hey, at least the Percy face is better than the troublesome truck face at Drayton Manor. We interrupt this coaster ranking for some breaking news, as it appears that the Tasmanian Devil has invaded the island of Sodor. Do we have footage of the conflict? Yeah, it seems that Magic Flyer is yet another victim of the Six Flags purge, as the ride is being removed, as Whistle Stop Park is being absorbed into the Bugs Bunny world, now to be renamed Looney Tunes Land, with the former Thomas area becoming the new sub-area Tasmania, which aside from the name has nothing to do with the 90s cartoon of the same name. The train will stay, but Magic Flyer and the nearby Tweety's Escape are to be demolished. I am mixed on this. While on one hand, Magic Mountain is finally upgrading one of its least looked at areas, but on the other hand, it not only means the Vekoma Thrill Glider is being delayed to 2027, but it also means the end of not only Magic Mountain's oldest coaster, but also what might be the oldest steel coaster in the entire chain. I'd say ride it while you still can, but the ride has a maximum height limitation, and the ride will be gone by the time this video is up.
I saw a guy do this in a toothpaste ad once.
And now for 2 clone rides, which is why I decided to talk about them in the same segment. These are the 2 Zamperla gravity coasters I've ridden, the 2 at the California Legacy Six Flags parks, those being Roadrunner Express at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, and Speedy Gonzales Hot Rod Racers at Six Flags Magic Mountain, in that order. Both are the same, but different and such, though, as Speedy Gonzales opened 15 years after Roadrunner, it's gotten a slightly better reputation. And of course, I gotta mention that in 2019, when Michigan's Adventure announced Camp Snoopy for 2020, for some reason, RCDB added Woodstock Express as an all-new Zamperla gravity coaster, and several people, including myself, thought that Michigan's Adventure was finally getting a ground-up coaster, until the park mentioned in a reply on social media that Woodstock Express was just a re-theme of Big Dipper, which we should have known from the start, as the art provided showed the layout of Big Dipper.
It appears that Death is in love with California kiddie coasters.
Yep. Magic Flyer wasn't enough, as Speedy Gonzales Hot Rod Racers is also set to be removed for the Looney Tunes Land expansion, leaving Magic Mountain with only 2 kiddie coasters and 17 coasters in total, marking the first time since 2011 that Magic Mountain has had less coasters than Cedar Point. I bet Magic Mountain fanboys are in tears right now. Hot Rod Racers is set to close sometime in 2026, as the remodel will be done in segments to ensure the area isn't completely closed. Keep in mind that Magic Mountain is technically Wally World. Also, as a side note, while I have been to Dollywood, I have not ridden Wishel Punk Chaser, so it won't count for the list.
Hey, come on over, have some fun with Crazy Taxi!
The Great Pumpkin Coaster at Kings Dominion is the first non-powered coaster I've ridden, all the way back in 2006. This coaster was originally named a Taxi Jam from 1997 to 2012, though at least it wasn't themed to Bill Cosby. When Kings Island Hanna-Barbera Land was absorbed into Nickelodeon Central to become Nickelodeon Universe, their Taxi Jam coaster became Little Bill's Giggle Coaster, a theme that lasted until 2009 when the Nickelodeon theme was replaced with Snoopy. Like, yeah, I did watch Little Bill as a kid alongside other Nick Jr. shows, but I don't remember it as much as Dora or Backyardigans or Blue's Clues. Though that could also be a side effect of seeing those more recently, as Little Bill got only a few home media releases and never made the streaming because of the obvious. Maybe things would have been better if they replaced the ill with an air. As for the Great Pumpkin Coaster, I know on my old list it was ahead of the next coaster, but I decided to put it behind our next entry.
That's Twister! Yeah, Twister!
Because it's a longer and more complex ride, I decided to slip Timberline Twister at Knott's Berry Farm in front of the Great Pumpkin Coaster. I can't ride them to check because 1. I live hundreds of miles from Kings Dominion and thousands from Knott's, 2. Both coasters have maximum height requirements, and 3. Timberline Twister is defunct. The coaster was removed in 2023 to make room for Snoopy's Tender Paw Twister. Knott's has the potential to have the most launch coasters out of any Six Flags park if they get Montezuma back up and running and ensure that the accelerator can stay open. Otherwise, I assume Canada's Wonderland and Kings Dominion will share the record. My 2020's coaster voyage started in 2023 with Woodstock Express at Michigan's Adventure. I already talked about this multiple times, from my experience to its history to altering the lyrics to a Disney sequel song, but there's still a bit more to say. First, I like this as a starting point to bigger coasters, even as someone in their 20s. Also, in 2024, they brought back the ride camera despite the camera being set up when I was there in 2023, though the park's camera booth still had the Big Dipper logo. Second, Big Dipper's original plot of land still remains vacant over half a decade after relocation. I say they should put in a new flat ride, maybe something more extreme than what they have currently. And third, I still say more parks should have these types of coasters. Hey, Six Flags, put a chance ride Big Dipper at Valley Fair and Worlds of Fun. Minnesota needs a major kids coaster that isn't powered, and I don't think major chain parks in the US should have Wacky Worms as their major kids coaster. These coasters are decently sized, fun to ride, and way more reliable than those kid flash coasters. Unfortunately, they'll just probably get one of the recently defunct Zamperla Gravity coasters from either Magic Mountain or Six Flags America. And now we move to a level slightly larger than the kiddie coasters with Cobra at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, the biggest of only 2 coasters in Northern California that I've ridden, because I've never been to Great America, and probably never will, and I have only been to Discovery Kingdom once, and probably wasn't tall or brave enough for Roar, and Tony Hawk wasn't open yet. And don't get me started on all the coasters in the park that have inversions. Cobra is a neat ride and it will satisfy any older newcomers to coasters who live in Northern California. Now, why are there only 4 in the Six Flags chain? Because Yaga Lake closed, and while one was planned for Fiesta Texas and parts did show up there, it went to Parque Warner instead. It's just like Siren's Curse, except the same year that happened, Fiesta Texas got Superman, so all is good. And now for the biggest coaster I've ridden in California, and the very second coaster built by D.H. Morgan to open, with Valley Fair's Wild Thing beating it by 2 weeks. West Coaster at the Santa Monica Pier Pacific Park is a basic coaster, and it makes sense as there is limited space and the coaster has to be built right above the paths. So they are not getting a Eurofire unless there's an area expansion, which I doubt the city would let happen. West Coaster is of course one of those things that's on everything from movies to television to even video games, probably because of its location on a popular boardwalk in the country's second most populous city, which also happens to be the capital of the American film and TV industry, which is definitely something I should know. I have been to the backlots of 3 of the 6 major Hollywood studios, as well as Nickelodeon. I have stood where Dr. Phil has stood, witnessed Ellen DeGeneres give Sam Smith a shelf to hold their 4 Grammy Awards, held the NCIS Los Angeles clapboard, and even possessed actual art assets from season 8 of SpongeBob SquarePants, one of which is an unused title card which I believe was first posted to the internet by yours truly. Dang it, I got carried away again. And hey, at least West Coaster opened on time, unlike West Coast Racers.
It's me!
Zach Zoomer at Michigan's Adventure isn't named after various noteworthy Zachs like Zachary Taylor, Zac Efron, Zach Braff, Zach Galifianakis, Zach Morris, Zach Martin, or me, it's named after the grandson of then-owner Roger Jordan, who owned the park from 1968 until selling it to Cedar Fair in 2001. Let's hope they keep the name, as it's probably the last remnant of the park's previous ownership and name, although Knott's still has its name intact and Zach Zoomer wasn't added to the neighboring Camp Snoopy. The main difference between my 2023 and 2024 rides is that I saw the camera and decided to pose. Zach Zoomer, at least it isn't Zach's Alpha, otherwise they'd have to make it 26 feet taller. The next 5 credits were all obtained after the original top 10 was made, and all of them surpassed the original 10. Plus, 3 of them are from a park I went to for the first time recently, so let's start with that.
Iron Dragon.
Guess what? I went to Cedar Point in summer 2025, and the first coaster I rode there was Iron Dragon. This isn't the first aero-suspended coaster I had the chance to ride, as I was going to ride Ninja at Magic Mountain until Speedy Gonzales of all rides put me off. And while I have been to Busch Gardens twice while Big Bad Wolf was open, I was 5 when I last went there while it was open. But now I have finally ridden one, although it's one of the tamer ones. This was the first coaster I rode that day because a future entry on this list wasn't open for the day yet, and I knew I could probably get on Iron Dragon, as after doing research, I found that it was friendly to larger riders, and that was correct. I had plenty of room. It's probably not the best aero-suspended coaster in the state of Ohio, but it's still a fun ride. The fear on the first lift hill and drop went away, and I started singing Meatloaf and Kenny Loggins, because the former was stuck in my head and the latter was tied to the other aero-sus in the state. The ride really kicks in after the second half with more intense turns and swinging. This was also the Cedar Point coaster I had the least difficulty getting off. Also, why did this open in 1987 and not 1988, the year of the dragon? It's just like Great America opening coasters before their anniversaries. Nagashima got it right, so why couldn't Cedar Point do it? And another thing, why is Dang it, Jakari, you made me lose 1 million brain cells.
That's what happens when a dragon comes in contact with a fairy, but at least your progress is saved. Also, how and why are you a dragon right now?
I was addicted to playing Spyro, and now it's time for the next coaster. At Michigan's Adventure, I was able to fit on all their wooden coasters, all of which use PTC trains. So I figured I would probably also fit on Blue Streak at Cedar Point, since it also had PTC trains. And I did, but just barely. I had to get the seatbelt extended and it was a very tight fit, but I still made it through, but had trouble getting unbuckled after the ride. Blue Streak has decent airtime and a nice paint job. More wooden coasters should have unorthodox paint schemes. And hey, if you end up visiting Cedar Point in the future and want to ride this, it probably won't have that long of a line. When I went there, it was a walk-on, unlike the other 2 coasters I rode at the park. Also, my dad was the only other person in the group who rode with me, which at least there means there are pics of me on the ride. Of course, Blue Streak also holds value as the oldest Cedar Point coaster still operating, the park's only fully wooden coaster still operating, and the only wooden coaster I've ridden so far that has nothing to do with the Din family. I find wooden coasters to be decently accommodating to larger riders, especially if they have PTC trains. While I haven't ridden any coasters with Millennium Flyers or Timberliners, I would like to try one someday. I possibly could have fit on Dollywood's Thunderhead, though I am more likely to go to a different park this year. Which one? I don't know.
With a rabbit Wolverine in my underwear.
The Din Corporation has gotten a shaky reputation. Sure, Charles Din helped build one of the most iconic coasters, relocated Phoenix to Knoebels, and his company would lead to another wooden coaster manufacturer that would in turn spawn 2 more, but the coasters actually built by his company have gotten a bad rep. Case in point, only 3 or 4 of their coasters are still operating, the others being scrapped or given the RMC treatment, with the ones that remain mainly being there because the park doesn't want to spend a huge amount of money for an iBox conversion or already have one. But Wolverine Wildcat at Michigan's Adventure shows that with a little love, you can do anything. The first big coaster I've ever ridden, this ride has some pretty good airtime and a nice setting by the lake. One standout element is a double up followed by a double down. Wolverine Wildcat is also noteworthy for being the only coaster that everyone in my immediate family has ridden, as with every other coaster, at least one of us decided to sit it out. And for the longest time, it was me. And Wolverine Wildcat has gotten a decent amount of TLC lately, from getting GCI Titan track on the first drop in 2022, and some extra retracking in 2024. Sure, some people might be disappointed in this, as it means they probably won't RMC it, which would give Michigan's Adventure a pretty decent 1-2 punch, but at least it means I can still ride it without needing a makeover myself.
Gonna paint our wagon, gonna paint it good.
So you might have noticed a pattern. Every coaster I've seen thus far is pretty traditional. You have a regular chain lift till, sometimes replaced with a booster wheel, with shallow banking and no inversions. Well, let's throw that out of the window with Maverick at Cedar Point. Yeah, it has a lift hill, but it launches as it goes up said lift hill. And besides, there's a flat launch later in the ride. Maverick is the only best new ride winner I've ridden, similar to how Astrobot is the only Game of the Year winner I played thoroughly. This coaster provides many firsts for me. It's my first launch coaster, my first coaster with a beyond vertical drop, first with inversions, first coaster by Intamin, and the fastest coaster I've ridden. And it is very intense, especially on the overbank turns, which you definitely gotta brace yourself for, which I didn't. I'm glad I never rode it with the hard restraints, as that would have been painful. And I do like how I was actually able to fit in the test seat. It was the only test seat I fit in of the 3 I tried, the other 2 being Raptor and Siren's Curse. I figured I wouldn't fit on Rougarou if I couldn't fit on Raptor, and while I didn't test Valraven or Gatekeeper, I did sit on the test seat for Dollywood's Wild Eagle and didn't fit. And the same thing applied to Steel Vengeance based on my experience on the Lightning Rod test seat. And every other coaster didn't have a test seat, so I didn't bother with those. Six Flags should try to make test seats for their older coasters. I don't know how they could do it, but they should. And Maverick was also my first experience going upside down on a coaster thanks to the twisted horseshoe roll, so the prediction in my original Michigan's Adventure video definitely did not age well. Also, I'm kinda glad I didn't experience the hardline roll. That will be too much for me, which is why despite fitting on Maverick, I'm probably not gonna ride Pantherian anytime soon. If I do ride another Intamin with vest restraints, it will most likely be Stormrunner and or Fahrenheit at Hershey Park. And surprisingly, everyone in my family, at least the ones who were there, rode Maverick, which is probably why half of them decided not to ride Blue Streak, as we did that after Maverick. Also, none of them saw the second launch coming. It's Shivering Timbers at Michigan's Adventure. No, this isn't home park bias. I do in fact find Shivering Timbers to be the superior ride, and I am not alone in that, as both Canobie Coaster and ElToroRyan rank Timbers over Maverick. So, what propelled me to personally rank Shivering Timbers over Maverick? Well, first, I like the airtime more than the intense turns, which were maybe a bit too much for me. Second, Timbers is more gentle, and I haven't gotten used to intensity yet, which is why if I did fit on Steel Vengeance, I probably wouldn't ride it just yet. I'd have to practice on another RMC like Wind Chaser first or something. And third, the anticipation of Shivering Timbers lift hill at least builds some suspense, while Maverick's launch hill was like quickly ripping off a bandage, though I am not sure how things would have happened if they had the trick track. Why do both of my top 2 coasters have removed elements? Plus, Shivering Timbers is more underrated. Sure, more people have made videos praising Timbers in recent years, but not as much as other rides. The ride's record for being the longest single lift hill wooden coaster was beaten by Son of Beast, and the record for most airtime was taken by the similar Voyage at Holiday World, as if Raven beating Timbers in the Golden Ticket Awards wasn't enough. Another thing that buried Shivering Timbers was that both Kings Island and Kings Dominion opened coasters in the late 2010s with Timbers in the name, Mystic Timbers and Twisted Timbers respectively. Well, if they'll replace Shivering with Mystic, I'll do the opposite. Card Captors, a shivering adventure. Card Captors, a quest for all time. If you end up in the Midwest during a coaster trip in 2026, you should at least consider traveling a bit up north to Michigan's Adventure for Shivering Timbers. And it might even be better than when I rode it. In 2025, they added RMC 208 track on top, and while I haven't ridden it with the retracking yet, I could in the future, although I'm more likely to go to a different park in 2026.